If you'd like to open up your Bibles, I will be reading Ecclesiastes 2, verse 1. I said in my heart, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy yourself. But behold, this was also vanity."
Allow me to encourage you to be turning with me there in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. And that's going to be where our lesson comes from this morning. Last week, we began examining this book of Ecclesiastes. And this is one of those books that really requires many readings in order for us to begin to unravel the layers of meaning that is found in this text. That on the surface of reading through this book, maybe for the first time, it can seem like a really depressing book. And to be fair, there is some of that. That part of the function and the purpose of this book is to force its readers to begin to wrestle with some of life's most uncomfortable questions. To begin to wrestle with some of the most uncomfortable truths that all of us at some point or another would be better off if we faced. But there's also an element of this book that it's important for us to understand what is the author doing. And this author, in many ways, this book should maybe be read sort of like a diary. Somebody who is searching for the good stuff in life, and they're chronicling every day, here's what I did, and that didn't work. Here's what I did, and that didn't work. And it's important that we understand that that's the function of this book, because there might be some elements of this book that we would say that's very unwise. That's not good advice to give somebody. If you were to just pull some of these verses out of context and say this is the way you should live your life, you would live a pretty messed up life, like this author did at various points within his life. And so it's important that we understand this book from that context. Before diving into chapter 2, I wanted to remind you of one Hebrew word that we pointed out last week that's very important for understanding the purpose and the function of this book. Because this word is used nearly 40 times in the book. The book begins with this word, and the book ends with this word. And in Hebrew, it's the word hevel. Some of your translations will translate that word as vanity, or futile, or maybe even meaningless. And we talked about how this word is one of the more difficult ones to translate, and that there is not an appropriate English word that fully captures the meaning of the Hebrew, that would literally mean something like smoke, or vapor, or breath. That quite literally, this word does not mean meaningless. Some of our translations have that word meaningless, and that's really a poor way of wrapping our minds around this word hevel. In fact, in our study for today, we're going to see that at times this author begins to compare that some things have more value than others. And so by definition, the word doesn't mean meaningless. Although many might think that way about their life, that their life is meaningless, that's not what the author is conveying, but rather it's hevel, that it's smoke, it's vapor, it's breath. Essentially, it's a way of saying that there are parts of your life that are fleeting. They're here and then they're gone. But also there's elements of your life that you try to grasp and it just slips through your fingers. You can't control it. It's not here for a long time. And that's the meaning of this word hevel. And so I want us to walk through most of chapter 2 today. And just a fair warning, we spoke last week about how before you get to the good stuff, sometimes it hurts a little bit and you wrestle with some uncomfortable questions. Well, today's going to be a lot of wrestling with those things, and then we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel at the end of our time for today. So chapter 2 and in verse 1, the writer of Ecclesiastes would say this, "I said in my heart, come now, and I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself, but behold, this also was hevel." So here we have the author who's on a search for what is it that's good in this world. Is there anything that's good in this life? And we also spoke last week about the phrase that you're going to see repeatedly throughout this book, under the sun, or under the heavens. And it was the author's way of saying, if there was no God, If all that there was in life is what you and I see here on this planet, then what good is there? And that's the framework of this book. And so he says, I'm going to find the stuff that's good, and I'm going to test my heart with pleasure. And he concluded at the end of that testing that everything was hevel. It was like smoke, vapor, breath. He would say in verse 2, I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? So his first thing that he decided to test himself with, we might call it comedy. He wanted to laugh. And so he wanted to experience things that made him happy, that make him smile, that would make him enjoy life. I don't know about you, but I love comedies. I like to watch shows that make me laugh. I like to watch good, clean, stand-up comedians. I could do that all day. I love to listen to people that make me laugh, people that are funny. But if there's somebody that you find to be extremely funny, and you hear them tell a joke, and it brings you to tears because you're laughing so hard, if you hear that same person tell the same joke 14 times, eventually you're going to stop laughing. There's going to come a point that you say, I've had enough of that. And that I don't know that my life is really any better as a result of that. And so he first tried laughter, and he said at the end that was something that was fleeting. Simple pleasures in life. And he says, well, what use is there? Moves on to verse 3, and he says, I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. My heart still guiding me with wisdom. Now I want to pause for a moment and just focus on that phrase, because it's interesting throughout this book. There are going to be times that as you and I read what this man decided to do with his life, and we say that is foolish. But yet he would say that he was still being guided with wisdom. This is his way of saying that he wasn't out of control. He was very intentional with testing everything that he found in his life. Is this going to be good for me? Is this going to be good for me? We're not talking about somebody who puts no thought. We're talking about somebody who's very intentional about even making the wrong decisions. And he says, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven for the few days of their life. He says, laughter didn't do it. It didn't fill the void in my life. Simple pleasures didn't do it. So now he turns to wine and foolishness. This book really sort of reads like the rebellious young adult who grew up in a good home with good parents who showed them this is the way that you should live and these are the paths that you should avoid. And as they grow up and they live on their own, they say, you know what, I'm going to go down all those paths my parents told me not to, and I'm going to see what good there is down those paths that I know I shouldn't go. He was searching, what is it that's going to make me happy in this world, in this life under the sun? If there was no God and all that there was this life, what's going to fill the void in my heart? He would move on to verse 4 through 6 and say, I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of the growing trees. And so here's what this author decided to do, and maybe it's something that some in this room can even resonate with a little bit. He says, I want to find what is it that's going to make me happy in this world. And I tried all of the fun stuff. I tried just laughter and simple pleasures, and I even gave myself to wine, and I even chased after all of the foolish things of this world, and that didn't do it. And so I poured myself into my work. I want to make sure that my work, my job, gets 100% of my dedication. We probably all know people that have essentially made their career their entire identity. That's what defines them as who they are. It's what they do for a living. And so that's the path that this individual's on. I want to pour myself into great works. He built great houses and planted vineyards and did beautiful things with the work of his hands. And he says, maybe that is where I'm going to find my value. Verse 7 and 8, he says, I bought male and female slaves. and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So his work didn't seem to be filling him up either. And so he decides, maybe what I need is I need servants. You ever looked at some stuff in your life that this needs to get done, but I just don't want to do it? Maybe my life would be better if I never had to do anything I didn't want to do. And so I'm going to get servants. I'm going to get slaves. I'm going to get male slaves. I'm going to get female slaves. Well, I also want to make sure that I'm very wealthy, and so accumulate as much gold and silver as I possibly can. Well, money and slaves, that's not going to be just enough. I need entertainment as well. I love music. And so I want to make sure I have the best singers from all of the land, that they're at my disposal. Anytime I want to hear something, they're right there waiting. Maybe what I'm going to find is that what's missing in my life is that maybe my marriage isn't enough. Maybe I need more than a relationship with one person. Maybe I need to look outside of that marriage, and I need to give myself to other people in these ungodly relationships. Maybe that's what's going to fill the void. I'm telling you, this man decided, I'm going to try everything, and I'm going to see, is there anything good in this world under the sun? Verse 10 sort of summarizes his approach. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I had kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all of my toil, and this was my reward for all of my toil. Why is it that anything that I see, I'm just going to do? He would say, well, I work hard. I deserve it. Maybe you've heard that type of mentality from somebody else within your life. I work hard all day. I deserve to have this in my life. This was the mentality of the author of Ecclesiastes. There's nothing that I wanted that I didn't try. Why? Because I'm rewarding myself for all of the great work that I've done in my life. Verse 11, then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil that I had expended in doing it. And behold, all was hevel, and a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. So after pouring himself into his work, and then attaining all of the riches, and then all of the trappings that come along with success and riches, he says everything was hevel. It was smoke. It was vapor. It was a breath. It was like trying to chase and gather the wind. The wind is real. You can feel it. You can see its results, but you can't catch it. You can't ever control it. As soon as you touch it, it slips through your hands. And he says that's what all of this is. It's something that you can't ever really wrap your hands around. And move on to verse 12 and 13. He says, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, and there is more gain in light than in darkness. So right here we see that he begins to have a crisis of sorts. He says, I've had all of this wisdom in my life, and I've worked all of my life, and I've done everything to the best of my ability, and everything is just hevel. So is there any benefit at all to being wise? And this is where we see the first subtle shift in his thinking, where he says, yes, there is more to gain in wisdom. And there is more gain in light than darkness. Not everything is meaningless. There are some things that matter more. There are some things that there is more weight behind. There are some things that are better, that there's more gain, there's more value. So he concludes, yes, wisdom is better than foolishness, and light is better than darkness. But even then, he had a problem. Because he says the wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool person walks in darkness, and yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. That's kind of a strange expression, that the wise person has eyes in his head. Essentially, if you're somebody of wisdom, you see clearly. You make good decisions. If you're a fool, you just walk around bumping into stuff. And that's the picture you're supposed to see. And he says, but here's the problem with that. Even though that the life is better for a wise person than it is for a fool, they're both going to meet the same end. They're both going to die. It doesn't matter if they're wise. It doesn't matter if they're foolish. They're both going to die. They're both going to meet this same end. He would then say, verse 15 through 17, rather, he'd say, "Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is hevel. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a striving after the wind." As he surveys what is life without God, what is life without sun, he says life under the sun has an end to it. Life under the sun is going to fade away. Life under the sun isn't going to be remembered. Life under the sun is nothing but hevel. And then he turns his attention to reflect on, well, what's going to happen with all of my stuff when I die? All of the things that I've built, all of the things that I've worked for, everything that I've accumulated when I die, what's going to happen to that? Verse 18. You say, "I hated all of my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be a master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity." So as he comes to grips with the fact that whether I'm wise or I'm a fool, I'm going to die, and now that I'm reflecting back on my life, what's going to happen with everything I've cared about whenever I'm gone? And he says somebody else is going to take it. And I have no control over whether or not that person is wise or that person is a fool. And he says this is hevel. That this is vanity, that this is smoke, it's vapor, it's breath. There's this great evil in this. Verse 20 through 21, he would say, "So I turned about, and I gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil." So he's identifying what he would call a great evil is that he achieves something great, he accumulates a lot of stuff, and then somebody else is going to enjoy his work. And he says that's what life under the sun is like. It's just hevel. So let me ask you a question. At this point in our study of Ecclesiastes, are you feeling uplifted yet? Right? I'm trying to find what is it that's good in this world. And so anything that I see that excites me, I'm going to do it. I found emptiness there. I found a brief pleasure, and then it was gone, and there was nothing left to show for it. Okay, I'm going to pour everything into my work. Well, guess what? Eventually, somebody else is going to run those businesses. Somebody else is going to have my bank account. And what if they're a fool? And what if they waste everything I've spent my entire life working for? Well, if I'm extremely wise, I'm the highest educated person in the room, I'm still going to die, just as the lowliest educated person in the room. And so he's grappling with all of this stuff and saying, what is the point? What is the meaning of this life? Is there anything that is good? And it's at this point that we begin to see a subtle mindset shift in the author of Ecclesiastes that's going to set the stage for some better days ahead in our study and also help us see the light that he began to see at the end of the tunnel. And he concluded this in verse 24 and 25. He says, "There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat and who can have enjoyment?" Keep in mind that the frame of this entire experiment of his life is what is life like under the sun? What is life like on this planet? What is life like if this is all that there is? And the conclusion of the matter is it's all hevel. It's all smoke, vapor, breath. You can't make sense of it. You can't grab it. You can't control it. It's frustrating. It's fleeting. But then he reaches a different conclusion about what is life like with God. And the fact is, the matter is that life with God brings enjoyment. The life with God brings a new perspective. In fact, the phrase that is highlighted there for find enjoyment comes from a well-known Hebrew idiom that literally means to make your soul see the good. To make your soul see the good. You know, there are some people that just live unhappy lives. You've met them. They're the people that they're just never happy about anything, and maybe because they don't know what else to talk about, they just reflexively complain about whatever's in front of them. There's not enough ice in my cup of water. It's too hot today. The car in front of me on the way in, they didn't go as soon as the light turned green. They might begin to reflect on, you know, I've worked really hard my entire life, but eventually my kids are going to inherit this, and what if they don't appreciate it? You know, what about this business that I've built? Well, now it's no more. And they begin to reflect on all of the negative things that are within their life, and they just find themselves being a sour person. One day, my stuff is going to go to somebody else. Eventually, if the Lord doesn't return first, I'm going to be long forgotten. Nobody's going to know my name. And yet, wisdom then emerges in this chapter that there is something of supreme value in your life, and it's making your soul see the good. Because there is good all around you. You have health that has enabled you to be able to be here today. You have family that loves you. We have this book that we call the Bible, this inspired words of God that have been preserved for us. You have good friends. You have good food. We eat good food here as a church family. Many of you are going to go home and cook a good meal or go out to a restaurant. You have food at an abundance. You have entertainment that makes your heart glad. You have so much to see that is good around you. I want to encourage you to sit with this thought this morning. Don't convince yourself that God doesn't care about your happiness. I've often heard preachers say, God doesn't care about your happiness, He cares about your holiness. The author of Ecclesiastes would say that, well, half of that is true. God does care about your holiness. But God wants you to enjoy your life. And that the gift from God is when somebody makes their soul see the good in the life all around them. Because life under the sun is hevel. But life with God gives you a new perspective. It echoes what Paul would say to the church in Philippi in Philippians chapter 4 and in verse 8, where he would say, is there anything good? Is there anything worthy of praise? Think on these things. That's what the author of Ecclesiastes is saying. And that's a gift from God. Because life without God is hevel. But life with God is filled with meaning. It's filled with purpose. It's filled with enjoyment. And the author of Ecclesiastes would say, and that is the gift that comes from God. I want to ask you this morning, how is your mentality towards life? Do you find yourself as somebody who's always thinking of the negative things? Or are you somebody who forces your soul to see the good? Because a deep and abiding relationship with God is one that can flip that perspective and allow you to enjoy your life because you see the good. If we can help you in your walk with God, maybe gain that perspective, we'd love to pray with you and encourage you in any way that we can as together we stand and sing the song of invitation.